Let's be honest. One guest doesn't belong here anymore. Sloane said it like a toast, her glass lifted, her smile tight enough to cut. The private room at the Garrison went still, the hush broken by a few nervous laughs. That turned real when my father chuckled. My mother looked at me over the rim of her flute and didn't blink. I felt the heat rise, not to my cheeks but to my spine, that old urge to apologize for existing. Instead, I set my napkin down and said, "Then dinner's on your card, Sloane." The room exhaled, a rustle of linen and bracelets. I stood, slid my chair in, and let my heels find a steady rhythm on the hardwood, while the server, wide-eyed, stepped aside. No scene, no tears, just the end of something I had been funding for too long. By the host stand, my phone buzzed once, twice, then in a frantic cascade. I didn't answer. Outside, the February air bit my throat clean and made the lobster and Cabernet feel like a mistake I could finally spit out. I walked to my car and drove because movement had always helped me think. "You humiliated us." "Get back here and pay," Sloane barked in the first voicemail. Dad's voice followed, flat as a receipt. "Family steps up." "You owe us," Mom tried a softer. "How could you, Maya?" I let them stack. The skyline pulled itself together in the windshield while I breathed in fours, my hands steady. I had seen this night coming a week earlier when Sloane texted, "Bring your card. Big celebration." I saved the message, then took a screenshot and mailed it to myself. Subject line, Garrison, expectation. Even though I'd covered their dinners, co-pays, and splurges for years, that text changed the angle of the light. It wasn't a hopeful assumption anymore, it was policy. At the table, their voices had floated around me. Skip the cheap bottle, order the Napa, add the filet, it's Dad's big 6-6. And every choice landed like a small invoice with my name on it. I stayed quiet because I wanted to see what happened when I didn't volunteer. What happened was relief. It arrived when I crossed the river and the bridge deck thrummed under the tires, a hard little drum that said, "Keep going." I pictured the check landing, a glossy folder opening, the number printed in careful serif. I imagined Sloane's laugh turning to a thin line, imagined Mom's glance flick to Dad, then to the cousins. The thought didn't make me giddy. It made me sure. If love hinged on my card, it wasn't love, just bookkeeping. At a red light, I toggled airplane mode so their calls couldn't pry me back. The voicemail counter climbed. I filed each soundbite in my head. Sloane's indignation, Dad's entitlement, Mom's practiced tremor. Evidence, I thought, not rage. When the light switched, I let the car slip forward and realized my jaw had unclenched for the first time all evening. They would say I abandoned the family. I would say I refused a contract I never signed. At home, I parked and sat in the quiet, my coat still buttoned. I wrote down the time I left the restaurant, the time the first voicemail hit, the name on the reservation, the server's features as best I could remember, dark hair, silver tie clip, because details mattered when people rewrote history. I knew they would try. I also knew I would not pay to keep their story intact. I pressed save, set the phone on the table, and listened to the apartment settle around me, like a room that finally belonged to me. By the next morning, the voicemails had multiplied into a chorus, 37 messages, each one sharpening the same blade. Sloane's voice cracked with fury. Dad's words carried that legalistic tone he used when balancing his checkbook. Mom wailed about shame, and even Caleb sent a one-line text. "Really, Maya? You're leaving us with this?" I stared at the phone until the screen dimmed, then flipped it face down. Silence felt like armor. I brewed coffee and sat at the kitchen table, notebook open. On the first page, I wrote in block letters, years of proof. I began listing out the transfers. Monthly $850 to Sloane's loft, 2 semesters of Caleb's kids' tuition, Dad's knee surgery copay, Mom's crowns and bridge work. Next to each, I scribbled approximate dates and amounts. My folders bulged with receipts, tax files, insurance paperwork. I had kept them out of habit, not strategy. But now they looked like a defense. I thought back to the years when my identity blurred into a debit card. At 26, just as my design career took off, Dad asked for help with a deductible. I said yes. At 28, Mom needed a new crown. and I paid without hesitation. By 30, Sloan had lost another client and another apartment. I signed her lease with my name. Caleb's business failed around the same time, and his boys' school sent notices with my address. The pattern hardened like cement. I provided, they consumed, and no one acknowledged the trade. When I tried to speak up, Sloan dismissed me with her trademark smirk. "You're the independent one, Maya. You can handle it?" Caleb never said thank you, only sighed theatrically about his bills. My parents preferred guilt over gratitude, reminding me of sacrifices they made decades ago. I had believed them, convincing myself this was repayment, some adult version of filial duty. But looking at the ink on my notebook page, I saw transactions, not bonds. The memory of last night flickered again. Sloan pointing, Mom smirking, Dad's laugh rolling like approval. For a moment at the table, I had almost broken. My chest had clenched, begging me to shout or to cry. But I'd chosen the smirk, the line, the walkout. Now, sitting alone, I understood that choice better. It wasn't rebellion, it was survival. I flipped to a clean page and started a timeline. February 12th, 7:45 p.m., Sloan toast. 7:50, Maya exits. 8:05, first voicemail from Sloan. 8:10, Dad. 8:14, Mom. Each entry felt like a nail in a board, something sturdy I could lean on if the house of lies tilted. I knew my family too well to believe they'd let me slip away. They would spin this as betrayal, whisper to relatives, craft a story where I was ungrateful, selfish, maybe unstable. My phone buzzed again. I didn't pick up. Instead, I slid the notebook across the table and leaned back, coffee cooling in my hand. For years, I'd thought money bound us, but money had only bought me silence. Now, finally, I was writing. 3 nights later, the buzzer shrieked through my apartment like an alarm. I was curled on the couch, laptop balanced on my knees, trying to drown their absence in freelance work. The intercom screen lit up, and there they were, my entire family, clustered like a jury on my doorstep. Sloan in front, arms folded, lips drawn tight, Dad behind her, shoulders squared, Mom clutching her purse with damp tissues peeking out. Caleb hovered at the edge, hands in his jacket pockets, gaze fixed anywhere but the camera. My stomach dropped, but I pressed the buzzer. I needed to see their faces up close, no filters of voicemail or text. The door slammed open, and they filed in as if they owned the place. Sloan spoke first, voice slicing through the air. "You're unbelievable, Maya. You left us with an $8,800 bill. Do you have any idea how humiliating that was?" She paced across my rug, heels striking like she wanted to leave dents. I stood near the kitchen counter, arms crossed, grounding myself against the urge to shout. Mom's turn came next, trembling hands lifting a tissue. "How could you do this to your father?" His 66th birthday, ruined. Everyone stared, whispered, wondered what went wrong with our family. Her words dripped rehearsed sorrow, but I'd seen that act before, at funerals, at fundraisers, any time she needed sympathy. Dad finally spoke, his voice a low command. "Make this right, Maya. Family doesn't abandon family." He looked at me as if I were already guilty, sentencing delivered, punishment pending. Caleb shifted uncomfortably before muttering, "You know things are tight with the kids. We can't afford this kind of drama. You're supposed to help." His words, soft but cutting, landed heavier than Dad's, because I had been helping year after year, semester after semester. I let them finish, then inhaled. My voice came out steady, though my chest hammered. "I'm not your ATM," I said, locking eyes with Sloan. "I've been carrying this family for years, and you call me selfish?" "I'm done." Her jaw dropped. Dad bristled, stepping forward. "Watch your tone," he warned, like I was still 12. "Family stands together." I laughed, a brittle sound that filled the small room. "Family? You mean the people who laughed while my sister threw me out like garbage? That's not family. That's an audience." Mom's sobs grew louder, her tissue pressed hard against her face. Caleb looked away. For a moment, the room felt like a stage, each of them playing their role. Accuser, victim, enforcer, bystander. I clenched my fists, nails biting into my palms. "You want me to pay?" Tell me why. Tell me how mocking me at that table earned you another cent from me." Silence spread. Sloane's mouth opened, closed. Dad's glare deepened, but no answer came. When they refused to leave, I picked up my phone. "If you don't walk out now, I'll call security." My hand hovered over the screen, and that finally broke them. They shuffled toward the door, muttering curses, promises that I'd regret this. The latch clicked shut behind them, leaving the apartment heavy with their absence. I slid down the wall, breath shaking, heart wild. For the first time, I had stood my ground without folding. Fear lingered, yes, but beneath it, something steadier pulsed. Resolve. 2 mornings after the confrontation, I met Riley at a cafe on Hennepin Avenue. The place smelled of burnt espresso and sugar glaze, and the clatter of mugs made it feel safe, ordinary, exactly what I needed. She slid into the booth across from me, scarf still wrapped tight, eyes scanning my face. "Rough week?" she asked. I laughed without humor and told her everything, how they barged into my apartment, the accusations, the guilt. Riley listened, her fingers tracing the rim of her cup, until my words dried up. Then she leaned closer, lowering her voice. "Maya, you know your parents aren't broke, right?" The sentence hit me harder than the confrontation. I frowned, ready to dismiss it, but she unlocked her phone and turned the screen my way. A screenshot glowed there. A text from her cousin, who'd been at a barbecue with one of my uncles. My father had bragged, casually, about a savings account with at least $50,000 tucked away. For a moment, the cafe sounds dimmed. I heard only my own pulse, 50,000. While I had been scraping late nights for client revisions, wiring money to cover their bills, they had been sitting on a cushion large enough to ease every emergency they claimed to suffer. I gripped the mug, heat searing my palm. Memories shuffled through my mind. Mom sighing about dental work, Dad groaning about copays, Sloane hinting she couldn't cover rent, Caleb texting about tuition shortfalls. Each plea had come wrapped in urgency, each withdrawal from my account justified as survival. And yet, they had savings. "I thought you should know," Riley said gently. "You're not crazy. They've been playing you." The betrayal was sharper than Sloane's toast or Dad's glare. Those had been wounds of pride. This was theft of trust. They hadn't just used me. They had lied, year after year, letting me believe I was their lifeline. I pressed my thumb against the rim of the mug until the ceramic bit back. I forced a breath. "I need proof," I said finally. Riley nodded, forwarded the screenshot, and I saved it instantly. Then I opened my notebook, the one already thick with timelines and receipts, and added a new heading, Hidden Assets. Beneath it, I wrote the date, the source, and the exact words of Dad's brag. That night, alone at my desk, I stared at the glow of my laptop. The folder where I kept insurance invoices and rent transfers grew heavier with each click. Now I had something else, a glimpse behind their curtain, a reason that everything I'd felt wasn't paranoia but pattern. The betrayal didn't just ache, it clarified. I whispered into the quiet, they chose to let me bleed. The words stayed, echoing against the walls of my apartment, until resolve pushed in where shock had been. I wasn't done with this story. A week later, I sat in a diner on Lyndale with Aunt Nora, the kind of place where the vinyl booths squeaked, and the coffee came in bottomless chipped mugs. She was already there, stirring sugar into her cup, her expression warm but edged with concern. I slid into the booth, exhaustion dragging at my shoulders. For once, I didn't try to soften the story. I told her everything. The humiliation at the Garrison, the invasion of my apartment, the years of bills with my name on them. When I mentioned the hidden savings Riley uncovered, Nora's fork froze halfway to her mouth. "They've got what?" she asked, voice low. I showed her the screenshot, the brag typed in casual shorthand. She let out a breath, set the fork down, and shook her head slowly. "Maya, that's not just selfish. That's calculated." She promised she'd keep it quiet, but I knew my aunt well enough. Truth, once in her hands, traveled faster than smoke. I didn't ask her to spread it. I didn't need to. But the idea of silence gnawed at me. Later that night, back in my apartment, I opened Instagram. The cursor blinked in the caption box while I stared at the empty screen. My fingers trembled. Not from fear, but from the weight of deciding. Then I began to type. When your family treats you like a bank, laughs when you're pushed out of a celebration, and hides money while you drain yourself to keep them afloat, you learn who they really are. I'm done carrying people who don't value me. I read it 3 times, debating whether the words were too raw, too obvious. Then I hit post. The phone buzzed almost immediately. Likes, comments, messages sliding in like a tide. A cousin from Omaha wrote, "Is this about your parents?" I had no idea. Another message glowed, "You don't deserve that, Maya. Stay strong." The support steadied me. A reminder that the narrative wasn't entirely theirs to control, but I also knew my family would see it. By morning, the post had spread through extended relatives, cousins I hadn't spoken to in years, even old neighbors. My DMs piled up, half sympathy, half curiosity. I resisted the urge to delete it. Instead, I screenshotted the reactions, cataloging them with the rest of my evidence. At my desk, I opened the notebook again. Under hidden assets, I added another line, IG post, public statement, timestamp saved. It wasn't revenge, it was survival. The creation of a paper trail in plain sight. My family could twist stories behind closed doors, but they couldn't erase what was now out in the open. I leaned back, letting the city noise drift through the window. For the first time, I felt like I wasn't carrying the secret alone. Nora knew. Riley knew. Dozens of others knew. The truth wasn't safe yet, but it had finally left the shadows. 10 days after the Instagram post, an email landed in my inbox with the subject line about Maya. At first I thought it was spam, but then I saw the sender, Sloan. She hadn't meant to include me. My stomach knotted as I clicked it open, my pulse hammering with each scroll. The message was addressed to a family friend in St. Louis, someone who'd always sided with her. "We need to stick together on this," she wrote. "Maya's out of control, spreading lies to make us look bad. Tell everyone she's been erratic for months. It's stress from her job. I'll handle the rest." Line after line outlined her plan. Convince cousins that I was unstable, minimize the $50,000 savings account as an old retirement fund, portray me as bitter and delusional. She wasn't just defending herself, she was orchestrating a smear campaign, complete with talking points. My fingers shook as I scrolled back up, then down again. Every fear I'd had since walking out of the garrison, every suspicion that they'd twist the story, was confirmed in cold text. This wasn't a misunderstanding, this was strategy. I saved the email instantly, downloading the raw source with headers, then forwarded it to Riley and Aunt Nora with a single line, "Proof at last." Within minutes, Riley called, her voice fierce. "They've hung themselves, Maya. Don't let them bury you with their lies." Nora followed with a text in all caps, "I'm telling everyone. They need to see this." For a moment, relief surged, almost dizzying. I wasn't imagining the manipulation. Here it was, in my inbox, undeniable, but fear trailed close behind. Exposing them would burn the last threads connecting me to my family. Could I live with that? I opened my notebook and wrote in block letters, March 4th, 11:17 a.m. Sloan email, smear plan, CC mistake, evidence preserved. The pen felt steady in my hand. The fear was real, but so was the clarity. They had chosen war, not me. I closed the notebook, leaned back, and let the hum of the radiator fill the silence. In my mind, I saw Sloane's face when she realized her own email had armed me. Not satisfaction, just certainty. They wanted to paint me as unstable. Instead, they'd handed me the brush. 2 weeks later, Aunt Nora carried the email to a family barbecue in St. Louis. By evening, the Brooks family's image began to collapse, like wet paper. Cousins passed her phone around the picnic tables, eyes widening as they read Sloane's words. "Tell everyone she's erratic. Say it's stress from her job." Murmurs spread. Uncles shook their heads. Even the relatives who usually stayed neutral whispered, "She really wrote this?" News traveled faster than I imagined. Within days, calls and messages reached me from cousins in Omaha, from an aunt in Chicago, from family friends who had once believed every polished photo my parents posted. They weren't just shocked about the hidden $50,000. They were disgusted by the smear plan. Sympathy shifted. For the first time, it wasn't me standing alone. Sloane felt the consequences first. Without my monthly payments, she fell 2 months behind on her rent, in that sleek loft she loved to flaunt. A cousin sent me a photo of her hauling boxes into a cramped walk-up in a rundown suburb. She tried to spin it online, posting about fresh starts, but the comments were merciless. Aunts unfollowed. Cousins left blunt replies, fresh start or eviction? For someone who fed on appearances, the silence hurt more than the move. My parents stumbled next. Martin and Linda dipped into their precious savings, but their dignity drained faster than their account. At a wedding in Chicago, my uncle cornered Dad near the bar, voice loud enough for half the room to hear. How could you let Maya pay while you sat on 50 grand? Mom tried her well-rehearsed tears, but no one reached for tissues. Invitations dried up. Their circles shrank. The steakhouse selfies they posted afterward felt hollow, captions straining for approval that never came. Caleb's unraveling was quieter, but no less brutal. Without my tuition checks, his boy's private school sent final notices. His wife picked up extra shifts. Arguments spilled into the open. A cousin told Riley she'd heard shouting from their house 2 nights in a row. Caleb texted me a single line. Didn't mean for it to go this far. But I didn't reply. He'd stood silent when Sloane humiliated me. And silence has consequences. Meanwhile, I stayed still. I didn't gloat. I didn't post follow-ups. Riley reminded me daily, let the truth do the work. Nora checked in, proud, protective. I kept cataloging screenshots, recording timelines, filing messages. The more I documented, the steadier I felt. For once, their chaos didn't drag me under. I watched from my small apartment as the empire I had funded cracked apart, each fracture exposing the rot beneath. Relief mingled with grief, but clarity outweighed both. They had made their choices. Now they were living with them. The morning after Nora called to say the email had gone viral in family chats, I opened my laptop and began cutting the final cords. One by one, I logged into the accounts I had carried for everyone. The shared phone plan, the streaming subscriptions, the Amazon Prime account my mother used for overnight deliveries. Each click of cancel felt like a door closing, and I saved every confirmation email in a folder labeled Severance. Next came the harder part, blocking their numbers. My thumb hovered for a moment over Dad's contact before I pressed delete. Then Mom's, Caleb's, Sloane's, years of late-night bailouts, grocery transfers, whispered just this once requests, all silenced in a few taps. The phone looked strange afterward, lighter somehow. By afternoon, the buzzing stopped. No more guilt-laced voicemails, no more texts disguised as updates, just quiet. For the first time in months, I sat on my couch without bracing for an alert. The silence was almost disorienting, like stepping off a treadmill that had been running for years. Riley dropped by with 2 lattes and a sharp smile. "You did it," she said, handing me a cup. I nodded, the knot in my chest loosening. Aunt Nora called later, her voice warm. "I'm proud of you, Maya. Boundaries aren't betrayal, they're survival." Still, when night fell, grief slipped in. I sat at my desk, staring at old family photos. Birthdays where Caleb's boys hugged me, holidays when Mom hummed in the kitchen, Dad carving turkey like it was tradition, not obligation. Those snapshots hurt, because they reminded me of what I thought I had, a family worth carrying. But the weight of reality pressed back. Those moments were framed by bills in my name, laughter funded by my exhaustion. I lit a candle, wrote another line in the notebook, March 20th, accounts closed, numbers blocked, independence established. The words steadied me. I wasn't erasing my family. I was erasing the illusion that their love depended on me sacrificing everything. Before bed, I scrolled through the support messages that had trickled in from cousins and even distant friends. Some simply wrote, "Proud of you." Others shared their own stories of toxic ties. For the first time, I felt connected, not by obligation, but by honesty. I turned off my phone, the apartment hushed around me, and whispered into the dark, "I'm free." 3 months after the last cord was cut, I carried my boxes into a loft in the Crossroads Arts District. The space was modest: exposed brick, tall windows, framing murals splashed across nearby walls. But every inch felt like mine. No shared keys, no hidden debts, just a table, a sketch pad, and the quiet hum of possibility. Work began to bloom again. Without the constant drain of covering everyone else, I poured my hours into clients who valued my designs. Some nights I stayed up sketching logos until dawn, not because I had to, but because I wanted to. Each finished project carried a strange new flavor, satisfaction, untainted by resentment. I found a community too. A group of designers, writers, and painters met weekly at a coffee shop nearby. They welcomed me without pretense, trading critiques over beer flights, swapping stories of missed deadlines and late-night inspirations. With them, I wasn't a paycheck or a fallback plan. I was just Maya, another creative trying to make something real. Riley joined often, her laughter grounding me when doubts lingered. Aunt Nora called every Sunday, her voice steady, reminding me that family could mean choice, not obligation. Their presence was proof that I hadn't walked into emptiness. I had walked into something new. Meanwhile, whispers about my parents and siblings drifted through the grapevine. Sloane's social media sparkled with forced positivity. Captions about new chapters, masking eviction notices. My parents dipped deeper into their savings, posting photos from steakhouses while relatives rolled their eyes. Caleb picked up delivery shifts, his marriage fraying under strain. I didn't gloat, I didn't intervene. Their struggles were theirs now, not mine. Some nights, doubt still crept in. I would glance at old photos tucked in a drawer. Christmas mornings, birthdays when laughter seemed genuine. The ache was real, but so was the lesson. Love that demands a receipt isn't love. I wrote the final entry in my notebook, June 28th, new loft, new circle, boundaries intact. The ink dried slowly, the letters sinking deep into the page. I leaned back, the city lights spilling through the window, and felt a quiet certainty settle in. I hadn't just walked away from them. I had walked toward myself. Freedom wasn't loud. It was this, a room that echoed only with my own voice, a life measured not by what I gave away, but by what I built for myself.